Gold and silver skyrocket to the moon, and if you are in crypto, it feels like you are left behind. Gold has 3x since November of 2022, and silver has 6x in that same time frame. Now, the stock market is also at all-time highs, but crypto is lagging. Now, this time it is so tempting to change your horse to where the action is. And if you're looking around, you'll see many people doing that. In the song I play at the end of this show, I mention never chasing boats that you've missed. This is a mistake that gets investors all the time. We will talk about today precious metals, we'll talk about where stocks are, and most importantly, we'll look deeply at the crypto market on this Wednesday show, joined by Paul from DEVVE. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, have you ever worried about money? And what if you didn't need to again? How would that feel? Isn't that really why we're all really here in crypto? What if you learned to use some of your money to work for you just right so that you never had to worry about money again later? Now, personally, I grew up poor in life, which meant secondhand clothes, packed lunches every day for school. And it isn't bad to grow up that way, but I realized that the true value of money is that it allows us options in life. It can decrease that gnawing worry we carry. How do we meet all these financial obligations and perhaps afford the nicer things we want and the travel we want? Now, after a few months of being in crypto, when I started 8 years ago, I recognized crypto investment done right had the most amazing, massive potential to allow us to get to a place where we don't have to worry about money again. After 8 years of being in crypto, I know that crypto can and will change your finances and your life, but there is a huge catch. You see, most people do it wrong. Crypto investment works amazingly well towards your goals when you take the right actions. While being in crypto, I learned something very troubling. You see, I know people that have been here longer than I have, and they're still stuck pretty close to where they were when they started and barely getting by. I also learned that 95% of people in crypto don't make meaningful money or flat out lose money. And it's really only 5% of crypto investors that make life-changing gains that really take those people into the lifestyle that we've all dreamed about as kids. Now, haven't we learned in life that if you find what the successful people are doing and you copy how they do things, you start having their results? So I started figuring out what those 5% did, and I put it into practice myself. And by 2021, using those principles, I was able to fire my day job, move to the city I wanted, and put myself in position to never have to work again if I didn't want to. And here in this channel is where I share what I learned. I share my research on the companies I like and why I like them. And today is our price analysis day. This is a day where we combine what I've learned with our special guest, Paul, joining us from DEVVE. Now, Paul has 30 years price analysis experience analyzing charts. It is a fun time looking at the price movements, what is happening, to see what might be cheap, what might be really cheap, what might be expensive, so that we can take a look at what might be about to explode that hasn't yet. So if you are looking to be part of that 5% that make life-changing gains, join the Patreon. The link for that is below, and we'll give you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. And our Rainmaker private Discord is where the deeper conversations are at. All right. Let's bring on our special guest, Paul, and get this show started. Paul, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure. And interesting times, as they say. Obviously, the big moves are in the metals. Been flagging that for a while. Equities haven't done very much. There's been a slight divergence between the Dow and the Nasdaq. The Dow went down, Nasdaq went up, but everything's in a consolidation. But overall, it's still, despite the news, looks like risk on. And we've got the Fed decision, which will probably come maybe before the, well, probably after the end of the show. We'll see what happens there. But no change is expected. But if you look at the way the dollar's moved, it's moving as though the dollar is going to move lower, you know, or we anticipated that, or rates are going to move lower. There's certainly an anticipation that that will happen, although there's not much evidence in the short term futures contracts to show that it will go down. And part of the reason for that is the inflation story, as again we mentioned or been talking about. One of the narratives has been that inflation will look like it will pick up, and we're seeing that with base and precious metals moving up so fast, and we're also seeing longer term yields having a little rise across the board, and it's well within normal parameters at this stage. But if it gets any further, I think it might start to get a bit out of hand. So we've got to keep an eye on those things. Those will be a competition to things like Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But certainly there's a lot of fear out there about the financial system. That seems to be making the rounds. And I would have thought in that environment, cryptocurrencies could do quite well, because it's anything that's outside the system that can't be controlled by one person or printed, as it were. But at the moment, it seems like gold and silver have been the main beneficiaries, with platinum and palladium continuing up as well. So we can have a look through the charts and see what's going on. But if you didn't know about the news, it would be pretty much equities going up and a very fast rise, to be fair, very unusual rise, but not impossible rise in gold and silver. And I think this has caught out a lot of people. I think they've been shorting it, and clearly that's the wrong thing to do. They don't really understand how markets work and how they can do these things. They're saying that this is something that happens, once every million years or so, but it's not. This can happen way more often. It's just it hasn't happened in, for example, silver since the 1980s, when there was a corner. And when people haven't experienced a chart from a long-term perspective, then they're caught out by what happens in the short term. This is a classic example of it. So we never say anything's kind of impossible. And I find it interesting that people do say things like, this is impossible, or this shouldn't be here, and all that sort of stuff. The market goes where it wants to go and never stand in the way of it. And it's a lesson to be learned, really.
Now, what do you think? So the Fed is meeting today, and we'll see if they lower interest rates or not. The difference between what Trueflation says inflation is and what the Fed is saying inflation is, based on the government numbers and all the estimates that they use to come up with their number.
See, I don't really pay much attention to what they say or do, to be honest. I'm just always looking at what the market is doing and what the futures are saying and what the short-term contracts are saying. And at the moment, they look pretty flat. So I don't think rates are really going to go down between now and well, it would be great if they did. I say it would be great. It would make the equity markets go up harder. It will probably make the dollar go down. I think this is what Trump wants. And if you remember when I was discussing in our private chat about how the way Trump's operating is, you might think it's great for America, but you've got to be careful about overdoing things. And when you overdo things, the market will make you pay the price. And so if you do lower interest rates, especially when inflation is potentially around the corner, you're going to cause this sort of market stress that will then turn around and end up being, a crash in something. So you have to respect the markets. And I'm not saying the intentions are bad. I'm just saying that you've just got to be careful about, putting all systems go and everything to 10 or 11, if you like, in order to make the economy go faster and faster. It can be dangerous. And for example, the tariffs have caused China to say that they won't allow any silver to come out of their country. So that's another kind of byproduct of creating defense for your own industry. Now, you might say defending your own industry is a positive thing, but wouldn't it be better if you just improved your industry and made it world class, made it better than the competition, support your industry, make it better, make it so that your cars can be exported to other countries and are better than the cars that are coming in? And then you've created real wealth, instead of just making prices higher for your competition, which then creates tit for tat problems. So they're second order effects and third order effects of these things, whilst they might seem in the short term to fix problems. In the longer term, they can cause problems. So I think rates will probably go down. I'm not sure as I was that rates were going to go down. I was pretty convinced into last year that they would. Now the market's really expecting it. Things have kind of eased off a bit. And if you look at the way the base metals are going up, I just don't see how they're going to justify it from an inflation point of view, unless those numbers look really, really good. And I just can't see how they're going to start to look really good, especially with oil going up. Like oil has been the one area where there's not been much of an upward trend. And if I was to say potentially, is there a reason why Bitcoin's not going up? One of those reasons might be, and again, it's not for me to look at fundamentals. I'm just kind of trying to work out why this isn't moving. It could be that mining costs might start to go up because oil prices might start to go up, because of course you need energy to mine Bitcoin. So it may be, and I'm open to arguments here, it may be that as oil prices have started to move now, they technically look like they will go up. So it's like a broad move in commodities higher. That might make it less efficient to mine Bitcoin, therefore hitting profits. Now, I know there are ways to make it easier to mine in order to bring more miners back online. I know there's a function that helps with that. So that might not necessarily be a major factor, but it's not going to help. It's, you know, if oil goes to $200, I'm sure that's a lot worse than it going to $5. So there's got to be some sort of tolerance in there. But for the moment, I would have, as I say, I would have thought in a fear-based market scenario, we should get some sort of rebound in cryptocurrencies, just because, as we know, they're permissionless and they're effectively outside the system. And if the system is starting to creak and crumble, as some people think, you know, it would make sense to at least have some as a hedge.
Yeah, I'll give my thoughts on why crypto is down while everything else is up. I'll share that a little bit later. In the meantime,
sorry.
why don't we look at what markets you're tracking and following and what you're seeing going on with some of the different markets, so we can get a feel for where things are at.
Yeah. So where are we? We are in an upward trend when it comes to the Dow Jones. It is consolidating on a kind of week-to-week basis, but it hasn't broken down yet, and maybe it will. But this is quite a nice little compression, and I can see why it's consolidating just below 50, because that's a big level. But if you look at everything else, like the S&P starting to break higher, the Nasdaq starting to break higher, those markets are still looking bullish. Now, if that's actually being driven by a weaker dollar, then so be it. Remember, this is something we've been saying, this consolidation will cause a breakout, and the breakout should be to the downside. It's been very aggressive, and it can continue further. And I expect it to continue further. So, you know, this is kind of a directional move for the dollar, which should boost risk on assets, and it should actually boost Bitcoin. So I'm surprised that hasn't moved. But if we look at, you know, we could look at oil, for example, and we see that starting to break out. It's not a major move, but it is definitely enough for me to think there's a bit of an upward trend going on there. But we got gold in this is a weekly chart, not even a daily chart. If we put it on a daily chart, this really is a very strong trend, and we still haven't seen the trend ending signal. I wonder if it's going to be somewhere around here. I don't know. You know, this is the thing about the way I look at charts. It's only when we're at the end of the trend that we see the signs. And whilst it's going up, I can't say that's it. I've got to keep following it. That also means that if somebody says, well, what do you do here? It forces me to say the market is still a buy at this point, because I don't know if it's going to go to 6,000. But it could also stop here, you know, in the same way that Monero was in a strong upward trend and then had a big correction. So gold and silver still in upward trends. You know, silver had this big correction back down, but it's now consolidating a bit actually. So we'll see. It's when one day down, and it's got sidestepped in that range. So there was a big panic up to 117, and we have to see whether that gets breached. So if that doesn't get breached into next week, that might be the beginning of a correction or consolidation. But I'm not going to stand in the way of this, because this is, accelerating, and it is very dangerous to try and pick tops. As the inverse, it's very dangerous to pick bottoms. So the market is moving aggressively up. Now, if we look at US yields, you can see 10-year yields broke out on at 4.2%, corrected, and now it's going back up again. So within the context of a range, that's not such a terrible thing. It's been higher, it's been lower, it's in the middle of the range, and it's moving up. But when you've got like pretty much every single base metal pushing up, here we go with copper, that's moving higher. I'm not saying that there won't be a correction in any of these markets. It's quite possible that we will see the markets come lower, but with all the base metals moving up, as I was saying at the top of the show, with all the precious metals moving up as well, and now with oil going up, I'm thinking that the outlook, certainly in the short term, looks like inflation is coming. So it would mean that if the dollar goes down in that environment, you've got a twin, pressure on these commodities, because you've got a weaker dollar pushing the commodities up. You've got lower interest rates pushing these commodities up. And you've also got fear in the financial system and geopolitical risk pushing up gold and silver, and tensions between potentially US, Iran, raising tensions with China as well. That kind of all mixes into making it even more important to be looking at commodities. So when it comes to Bitcoin, I would have thought that this correction would be one where, if this was going to go down, this consolidation here would normally continue quite quickly around this area here towards the end of the year. That would be the time scale for a compression and a breakdown. Now it's broken up, and that was a false move, and it's kind of breaking down. I think it's doing everything it can to kind of catch out the short-term traders. So it's, until it gives a clear signal, I'm not going to, venture too much of a bullish or bearish view. But I do think that the overall structure, given the upward trend is still up, or given the trend is still up from a big picture point of view, that does have a kind of 60-40 bias for me. So I think it might try and get back up towards the 100,000 area. Big resistance there at kind of 98 and in that zone. So we'll see if it can get up there, just because it's failed in both directions, but the broader trend is bullish. I mean, there's not much to say really until we get a clearer signal. One of the short-term signals here is this spike low, which has not been traded into, and it's trading above that. So I think if there was panic, it was panic on this bar where the volume went straight up and a lot of positions were liquidated. So I think it may grind its way back up, but we'll see what happens after that. It should be moving from now. It should be moving as the dollar's going down. And the longer that doesn't happen, the more kind of the greater the question mark it will be about how much momentum we've got for it to move, higher. So when we look at ETH, that is in a practically exactly the same position. We've got this short-term downward trend with this compression, which actually broke out to the downside here, but it's rebounded back up into this range. So it's not giving us very much of a clear signal. We draw the resistance point. We've got these two here as the main resistance, and then we've got what was the support line coming in here, which has now been breached. So it's kind of gone below that, but it's also coming back up again. So if we zoom in, you can see how it broke here. Now it's coming up to retest. So it feels like it's again trying to capture short-term swings. When you go long and it comes back, you go short and it goes back up again. So I'm going to wait for a very clear signal either through this area here or close below this low at 20. I'm going to say 2,700. Like a 1 week close below there, I think opens up the downside. I mean, volume has also been tailing off a little bit as the market's been going down, so that's not so bad. But really, I would like to see it in the middle of this range as a safety area, and towards the top of the range to be looking to break out from this 34.53, which is the key resistance point, which I think would open up momentum for a much bigger move to the upside. If we take a step back and look at the big picture, this could still be a big consolidation before it kind of works its way back up. And I'd like to leave that as an option. But you know, the market's got to tell us what it wants to do. I can't tell it what to do. I've got to wait and see. So there we are. That's the price action at the moment. Week to week, it's been a bit of a grind because it's not given us a trend. It's been a sideways stepping market, and it means we've got to observe more than anything else. But it's not like there's nothing going on in the big picture. There's plenty going on. So hopefully we'll see some form of breakout and some resolution.
Yeah, we definitely see crypto sitting on the sidelines while all these other things run. And it's crazy seeing silver and gold go so bonkers in price. There's been a lot of pressure to hold it down for a long time. And I've read stories where people are like, it's manipulated and, you know, they're trading way more paper than there is actual back gold and silver, and it's keeping the price down. Well, maybe that was true because there's so much physical delivery taking place on gold and silver now that people are requiring that, and so we're finally seeing gold shoot way up, silver shoot way up. Mike Jones with a big super chat asking us to look at a stock. We can take a look at that question by this before we get over to that stock, because it's kind of on subject. Just curious what Paul thinks about EU considering selling U.S. debt securities. I read Denmark's pension funds currently doing that now. That seems like a potential event with the current environment.
Yeah, I think again, this is the problem with the antagonism of going for Greenland and basically kind of not thinking about how it looks, because the US is the biggest country and the biggest, you know, got the most amount of nuclear power and all that, nuclear weapons, and kind of almost bullying your allies. Then they will just start selling their assets. Why should they be in any way kind of beholden or do special favors if they're going to be treated like that? It seems kind of fair enough. I think there's going to have to be some reparation of these types of aggressive moves. You know, some what's the word? You know, I think they've got to kind of sit down and sort it all out and just work together, because there's going to be plenty of enemies being developed over the next few years. He needs to keep his friends, you know, in good order, you know, and stop kind of just doing everything that's just good for the US. It's got to be good for everybody. Otherwise, that's the asset markets. Is exactly what I was saying at the top of the show. You know, you've got to be careful about having to sell debt to the rest of the world. We just stop buying it, and then you're left with a problem. And that's immediately what happened after the main tariffs. Now, perhaps the way he's doing things is much smarter than me. It probably is. You know, I'm sure that there's very clever people who are advising him as to what to do, and there is a bigger strategy out there. But on the face of it, you can see why they may be changing their mandate not to be buying US assets, US bonds, and they might want to switch to other things, simply because the you know, what we're seeing here is a leader who's looking to take what he wants, and also wants the dollar to go down, which means who wants to own US assets while the dollar goes down might make your exports look better, which is fine, but it comes at the price of other things, you know. And the biggest problem the US has got is selling debt.
Let's take a look over Alliance Resource and see what's going on. I've got it brought up on my screen. Did you find it yet?
Yeah, Mike. There's no need. I mean, from my point of view, I'll look at something, but there's not that many picks, so we've got plenty of time to look at stuff, which is actually fairly indicative of where we are in the crypto market. You know, I think a lot of people have kind of decided that that's it, and that's a good sign, I think, perhaps, mainly because, you know, that's where the rallies come in. That's where you'd expect the rallies to come in, when everyone's, you know, kind of given up, really. But yeah, I mean, look, this isn't a stock picking show, and it's not a crypto picking show either. It's really just looking at what the charts are talking about and whether I would invest in them, or whether I think how the charts look at the point in time that we're going to look at it. So, you know, if there was something major to say about it, I'd feel much better about there being a super chat on there, but sometimes there just isn't. And with this one, it's kind of it's in a range, and I would have thought that the trend for this would be to the upside. But if we bought it here in September 22, we're right at the same price in January 2026. So what's that telling me about the trend? It's kind of stalled. But from here, clearly this is up. So, but from here it's also down, which is why it's really balanced. So we need the momentum to swing, either to take out one of these highs or this low, in order to give it a kind of clear signal as to what the market wants to do technically. Because right now it's just a range. So I would look at this chart and I would say, right, you know, if I go through like the S&P 500 or, you know, UK 100 stocks, I'll just be flipping through them looking for technical patterns. And I'd look at this and go next, and I want to look at the next one. But I could like mark down this 22.34 level, because that's really key. It's got that high there and that low, that low, that low. So you can see if it breaks that, then we'll probably swing down to around 18, and that might be an area where buyers come in, and then it swings back up again. That's kind of 2 steps ahead. I'd have to wait and see. Now, if we keep going sideways, it doesn't break that. We've got this downward trend line that's almost sitting on it right now. It's more of a resistance line than an overall trend. It's literally right there now, and it's respected it, you know, 1, 2 times. So if it gets through that, then the next level will be at 25, and then it would start to look interesting because it would have broken out. But at the moment, it needs to do that for me to be looking at it further, as opposed to looking at something else that might already be up here and pressing this area here. Like, I'll give you an example. If we look at the Hong Kong stock market, so this is a very similar looking chart here, where it was kind of going down like that, and then it started to break out, and that's where I became interested. Like, I thought it was going to go up anyway, but this is where I became interested, because it broke down from these lower highs. Then you got this breakout here, and then it pushed into the previous high with a consolidation, and now it's broken through. So by rights, it should continue up towards 30,000, and now it's an interesting trend. But with the market that you're looking at, there isn't really enough for me to, at this point, to say that it's going to do that. I need it to break that downward trend line. Let me just put the code in again. It's ARLP. So I need it to break that first, and then it will be an interesting looking potential project for a test of this this prior high and a move higher. So it's kind of 1 step ahead. I've got to wait for that level to go.
So I was doing a little bit of digging on them to find out who they are, because the name doesn't tell you very much, but I was able to find their website, and, you know, fundamentals is what interests me. So Mike also shared they pay a 10.4% dividend. Is that based on where the stock price is right now? Because the stock price has changed drastically. Now, now knowing what they do, it makes sense why they had this massive decline here. Basically, Biden's administration, the U.S. had a war on coal, and were shutting down coal plants across the U.S. I had a friend looking at this big coal plot during that election time when it was unclear whether Trump would win or Biden would win. And it was this big piece of land, and it had a bunch of coal on it. And when Biden won, it absolutely killed the deal because the coal was going to become mostly worthless. So it looks like Energy Where We Go, a diversified energy company that generates income from coal production, as the second largest producer in the eastern United States. Royalty income from mineral interests owned in strategic coal and oil and gas producing regions across the United States. So interesting. Now I'll share some insights. If you think about what this channel is really about, it's about helping people learn to make their money make money for them, which is what I'm passionate about, because it's like, how do you have your money working for you while you sleep? Now, I'm most interested in crypto because that's where high volatility is. I think blockchain combined with cryptographic encryption allows the internet to do things that it could not do before. And that's going to bring about such massive change that most people still aren't seeing. They're getting frustrated because it's not pumping yet while all these other things are pumping. And I'll just say patience, because the pumps will be massive when they come. And I don't know whether that's in a month from now or 10 months from now, but they will come and it will be worth the wait. And it's so hard to watch other things going crazy and missing those boats. But if you sell low to buy high, basically chasing the boats that you've missed, it never goes well for you. So interesting suggestion. I mean, 10.4% dividend is pretty substantial. Now, unfortunately, coal production is hated by the Democrats in the worst way. But there's a secret war going on for energy production right now. Because if you think about what everyone's saying, the next generation of innovation is AI. But the truth is, the grid across the world cannot provide enough electricity for the AI that people are trying to build. And so one of the big up and coming areas is energy production. So this ARLP is positioned just right. And there are actually coal plants, coal energy production plants being bought right now by big names such as Google and Facebook and other companies like that, that then they're locating their AI data center right next to it, and they're using the electricity production from the coal plant to fuel their AI, because they can't just connect up their huge data center or AI center to the grid. The grid can't provide them enough energy. So that's where a huge growth sector is in energy, and it looks like they are positioned just right for it. Bitcoin was born to simplify finances. P equals K plus G. Satoshi. Good to have Satoshi here. We wonder where you were. I'm sure that's the real Satoshi. All right. Back to crypto. Yeah, thank you for the fun look at that. I like this type of thing because when crypto goes crazy, I will, this time, this is my second bull run that I'll be prepared for, and it will be time to take half of my gains, take them out of crypto into things that have a different volatility curve than crypto. And I'll be looking for as good returns on a monthly basis as I can get. And 10% is not bad. All right. Let's take a look. We looked at Bitcoin and ETH. Let's take a look. So on my mind is I think about where nobody else is, because the way you make money in investing is positioning yourself in things before everyone else gets there, things that are out of sight, out of mind for other people, but have strong value. They're just not being focused on right now. For example, imagine if you had focused on ARLP right here. I mean, for a stock to go, geez, it was at 260. It's gone almost 10x since October 2020. So in 6 years, in fact, most of that run happened here going into August of 2022. That's an amazing increase. And you're right, this might break to the upside, but it's got to break this line here at a minimum to be, and then it's got to break through these highs to really continue that run up. But I do think they're well positioned. But man, imagine if you had positioned yourself here when nobody else was here. Do you see what kind of gains you could have? Now, if you had bought here, it would have been depressing because then it went down for a while and then it went up. But anywhere in here was an amazing price with incredible gains. And so where is no one at that has a good future? I think blockchain gaming is one of my favorite narratives. And so we'll take a look at Illuvium and Star Atlas, two of the biggest AAA level games in the crypto space, and see what their price is doing.
So yeah, the price is still in a downward trend here, and until it reverses, until we get some form of even intermediate bullish technical signal, I'm going to have to be very cautious on the possibility of more downside. So if we look at the chart, it's basically down from November 21. After this consolidation breakout, that would have been a buy at like 118, but it wasn't sustained. And then once it gets below the trigger point, that's where we have to be careful. And then retesting the lows, got a reaction, but not enough to hold. And then we're still trading down. There was a possible double bottom here and it triggered, but then again, very quickly reversed. So, you know, it's been sold into a lot of the like buy signals, traditional technical buy signals have only worked temporarily. And again, that's why I always look for a parachute level, because if I'm wrong, I've got to know where to get out because I'm not looking at any of the fundamentals. And at the moment, the trend seems to be accelerating a little bit. In the very short term, these last few weeks, we have seen it hold into these lows. So there could be some evidence of it trying to build some form of base, but that's not enough for me to want to step in. I've got to see more of a base forming, especially after the market's been down for such a long time. And at the very minimum, one of these downward trend lines have got to break in order to initiate a consolidation, or what I would call accumulation, before the market then does something more interesting on the downside. Sorry, on the upside. But there's no doubt that it's at very cheap levels. But for me, cheap means that it's hit its low and then it's moving up and it's showing some form of upward trend from a base. So I'm not allowed to just step in and buy something because it's at a low level. So for me, it's definitely a wait. But we should come back to it. If it takes out one of these lines, things can happen very quickly, as we've seen before. So it's definitely worth looking at again.
Yeah, I love where it's at right now. And Paul's right, like it's continuing the trend down. So of course it's not going to be on Paul's radar. He likes to see a confirmation that it's ready to go the other way. And it still is pretty much in a downward trend. So, I mean, looking back, this is what I wanted. Looking back at its highs of almost $1,900, it's all the way down to $5. And most people see this, and what they see is, oh, it's dead. Because this trend went there, and then it bounced along, and then it's broken to new lows, and it looks and feels dead. Now, some things that I like about this is up here, there was very little Illuvium tokens in circulation. It also coincided with this huge blockchain gaming run, where prices went absolutely crazy back in later 2021. So during the bear market, not only was there price pressure pushing it down, but there was token investing pushing the price down. And so I often share that pendulums swing too far each way. And I can't stop thinking about Illuvium at these prices because it's so really cheap. Now, having played the game a bunch, followed closely where they're going, interviewed their team, like this is one of my favorite blockchain gaming narratives, and they're just positioned at such a low price that I absolutely love it. This puts our market cap under 40 million. Fully diluted value is 50 million. So you're seeing that a ton of their tokens are in circulation. But the price is really, really cheap. And now the token price itself might not seem that cheap. Oh, $5.40. That's really expensive compared to something like Cardano. But the total number in circulation, the circulating supply is so little that's why each token is so expensive. What you have to look at is their market cap itself as to know, is that price cheap or expensive? With a market cap of 37 million. What I like about this is we saw Axie Infinity's market cap go to like 9 billion or something, and that was in 2021. Illuvium is one that I think can do extremely well, and they pay essentially profit sharing out to their token holders. So I just feel like their positioning is amazing for when blockchain gaming takes a really big run. Their game development is good. Their team is good. They have still lots more runway to be able to pay their team to develop and work on the game. So their survivability is pretty strong, especially compared to all the other blockchain games. And yet their token price is absolutely devastatingly low. That's the situation I look for. And this is definitely a buy for me. I love it. Also, I was checking out their prices on their land. Now, having played their land game, like I realized that the tier ones are like the entry level price and it's cheap. If you're actually going to play the game, like the tier 4 lands, I think the entry level price is $700 to $900. Those were going for $22,000 back when they did the land sale. So they're 95% off. If you're actually going to play the game, the tier 4 is so much more productive for the time that you spend on the land. And I would just be buying the tier 4 and then holding it till Illuvium goes crazy. And then I'd be flipping the land. And in the meantime, you can play the game and figure out what you like about the land side of things and how it works, and you can actually generate some rewards with your land. Tier 4s being some of the highest rewards that you can get from one piece of land. So I think the token's a great deal, and I think their land is a great deal. So I'm really excited about where the price is at myself. Let's take a look at Atlas. Now, Star Atlas actually has 2 tokens. We're going to look at their main one, which is the Atlas token, and see what the charts are looking like.
Yeah, once again, it's still a downward trend, unfortunately. This is the main trend line, and it's kind of moved more away from it rather than looking to break it. So we could actually draw in a secondary downward trend line. Let's just put that in there from here. So it's fairly consistent with the way that's been going down. So again, the first step for me has to be that it breaks one of these lines to indicate that it's, step 1 of it reversing. Now, we did have this big spike down. That can be indicative of a final low, but whilst it's a signal on its own, like we look at that and say, right, it's made a spike, the market then has to follow on with a confirmatory signal, which would be a break of the downward trend line, which is not done yet. So it's still within this downward trend. And that for me is the tripwire to say that something interesting is happening on the upside. So unless we get some form of change in market dynamics from this kind of stepping downwards, for me, technically, I'd have to say it's a wait.
Yeah, from the charts, there's no indication that it's turned around. And we'll see at what point these turns around, or if. Now, Star Atlas, I'm not as familiar with the team that runs it. One of my concerns with Star Atlas is I don't know how much runway they have. Runway is how long can they continue operations without failing, because as you've seen, some, especially some crypto projects and many blockchain gaming projects have run out of runway before they really had liftoff, which is kind of like you're trying to take a small plane on a runway in the jungle, and if it doesn't get off in time, it runs into the end of the runway and into the forest and crashes into the forest and burns. That's what often happens, is some early startups fail, and crypto projects, they're essentially early stage startups. And so some of these blockchain gaming projects might become the biggest games in the world in the future, and some of them are going to crash and burn into the forest. So one of the most important questions you can ask is, how much runway do they have? And I don't know that part of the puzzle. When I last looked into it, it seemed nebulous that they had runway, but I didn't know how much. So we're even down the road months and months from then, and I don't know what their runway looks like. So that is a concern. This price action tracks with what Illuvium's price has done. So that part's not a concern to me. I like buying things when they're cheap. And sometimes when a project goes out of the narrative, it gets increasingly cheap and increasingly cheap. And one of the things I like about Star Atlas is they raised a whole bunch of funds when they did their token launch. So that should have given them plenty of cash to develop. And they are developing really cool things. I'm overly impressed with where their gameplay is at to this point and the shifts that they've made along the way. So when I was looking deeper at this 3 months ago, I was blown away with where their gameplay is at. And that made me happy and much more bullish about the future of the project. So still there's the big question of how much runway do they have to continue operations in case blockchain gaming's narrative and crypto doesn't really take off for, say, 10 more months. Now, with that said, I love this market cap price. For this was one of the biggest blockchain gaming projects, and its token, the market cap was often in the 100 million plus range. And so here it is all the way down at 6 million. And their companion token, they have a second token, Polis, which is their DAO token, and that market cap is at 8 million. Both of these absolutely punished in price at really, really good prices. So I rate them as a buy based on their price. Although before I actually bought, I'd be catching up on some interviews with the team, and I'd be trying to figure out how much runway they have. Now, I know some of my audience is more familiar, keeps up to date on Star Atlas even closer than I do. So if you know what the runway situation looks like, could you put it in the chat? All right. Yes, we will definitely add Rise in there, which used to be the Kopi token. We'll add in Rise and DEVVE. Let's jump over and take a look at Cardano.
Yeah. Okay. I had DEVVE ready.
We can go to DEVVE first. We have plenty of time to get to all three of these.
Okay. Yeah. So just because it's Chris, obviously, I just want to say that for anyone reading Chris's comments, he's obviously being sarcastic about silver because we were saying how it was going to go up, not how it was going to go down. So don't misread his comment that he was looking to go short, because he definitely wasn't. Because I think Chris has been listening very, very carefully to my gold and silver calls and commodity calls. So, so basically, with regard to DEVVE, I think the last time we looked at it last week or a couple of weeks ago, we were looking to see how it would react at this prior low, and it seems to have been fairly conclusive that it's broken down, which is kind of what I feared, but needed to get confirmation. This downward trend line is still in effect. So for me, I can't step in on markets like this because I don't know where it's going to stop. I need the market to tell me it's making a base. So for me, it's definitely a wait, but happy to look at it at any time.
I can't believe you're not FOMOing into DEVVE right there at those prices. Yeah. Definitely not where Paul is buying. Let's see. Let me pull this up on my chart. All right. So it's right. Actually, looks like it's broke to the downside of these lows. Now, that could be an indicator that it's going to go further down in the short term. Oftentimes it is, because it has broken below this. So this was the line at 13 cents and it wicked down here. Now, maybe it ends up bouncing up, but it could mean it might break lower like this. Now, DEVVE itself, one of the fastest blockchains. I've covered them a lot. It seems like they're having trouble getting noticed. Now, there's a lot of low cap altcoins right now. They're having real trouble getting noticed. So is that way out of the ordinary? Well, during the last bear market, there were a lot of projects I invested in that were having trouble getting noticed. And in the bull market, they really got noticed. So is it a concern? Yes, it is a concern. Does that mean they won't get noticed later? No, we have to wait and see when that bull market comes, if these things like fundamentals really do take off, because DEVVE is one of the fastest blockchains out there. There's also permission blockchain, which for enterprise use, permission blockchain is preferable for many enterprise uses over a permissionless blockchain like Solana or Cardano. And so we'll see if they get the kind of traction that I think they can. This is one of my biggest bets that I've taken in the crypto space. And we'll just see what it does. Went all the way up at launch. Its token stayed around its initial launch price, about 30 cents. I think it even went down to 20 cents before it blasted up to over $2, and then came back down, went back to about $1.80. Really on the news that they had done a partnership with one of the largest exchanges in the world, and they still have not released the news of that partnership. And so that, combined with crypto just going down, the price has absolutely been punished for now. So we'll see. DEVVE, I really like Tom and the team behind DEVVE, and I like their technology, and we will see how this plays out. At this price, I would rate it a buy overall, because buying cheap is a lot of what I do. I would caution you that if you're looking for it to go up right away, it could, but it could continue down further and get even cheaper. All right. So we had DEVVE, Cardano, and Kopi. I think Cardano was in the order of things next to look at.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Cardano, I think Chris's analysis is pretty much the same as what I would say. It is a bit boring. It's come back to a support area. And is it reasonable to expect it to be going up with everything else not going up? I think it's just following the rest of the market. It took a while for it to turn around, didn't it? It was going down and then going sideways when everything else was going up, and then it suddenly got this big, change in dynamics where it looked like everything was going to go, and then it's just slowly come back again into this range. So I would say it's kind of a favored project because it's one of the big ones, but not one that I think I'm going to miss out on if I don't buy immediately. It's kind of a set and forget for the long term, and just wait for it to kind of break out again to the upside and look interesting before kind of adding to core positions. Again, not really much to say until it starts to show a stronger upward trend, but certainly the pressure in the short term has been to the downside, especially when it lost this 50 cents area, both psychological and support from before. So for me to get more excited about it, it's got to swing back in through that 50 cents. And then I might start thinking about either buying it or adding to it. So for the moment, it's a wait. I think coming here, I want to see it bounce, but I've got to see the price action do that. There is a chance that, it will sink further, because as we're seeing, a lot of projects are going much potentially lower than they should be, inverted commas should be. But let's see when things turn around whether this is one of the first ones, which you would expect if it's a better project.
I would imagine this one, the first one's to turn around when things do turn around. And its really big run really kicked off here so during the bear market got really cheap. And here I was talking about there we go. Here I was talking about Cardano a lot when it was trading down at 24 cents. I was like, man, this is just too cheap for what Cardano is. And it was an incredible price. And then it did break to the upside, went all the way to 80 cents, came back down to 33 cents. And then when Trump won, this and some of the ISO standard coins took off tremendously. And so it went up to $1.30. So it pulled back all the way to 35 cents, which I like buying on a deal. And 35 cents on Cardano does feel like a deal. This is a good purchase range, tremendous purchase range. I don't think that these prices are going to last for forever. Now, back to what we were talking about at the beginning, where everything's going up but crypto. And the truth is not everything is going up versus crypto, but it feels like it. Because when you're in a position and other things are going up, it feels like everything but what you're in is going up, and it's frustrating. I remember back in 2017, and I was loading up and the altcoin rally started to really kick off. And of course, as luck would have it, the narratives that I were in didn't take off first. Other narratives did. And so I was stuck in narratives that were not moving yet, but it felt like that are not moving and perhaps not going to move. And you know what I did? And I kind of knew better because I'd been investing for a long time. But I did it anyway because I was new to crypto and I thought maybe crypto was different. I sold what was low to buy what was high. And so big mistake. I caught a little bit of upside on the ones that I sold or that I bought, and then they retraced down. And some of the ones that I sold then went 8, 10, and 15x. So I learned a very valuable lesson about not chasing the boats that I've missed, and that I look for boats that I feel are still at the dock, that the price hasn't run away yet. Things like Cardano at this price. Now, sometimes because you don't know when the boat is going to leave the dock, you end up having to wait on that one a long time. Well, that's okay. I don't mind being patient. I just want to make sure I'm loading in on boats that I feel like have a good chance to do well. And Cardano is one of those boats that I think has a good chance to do well. So good pick. In this range, I would say it's a buy. And let's take a look at what else we got.
Cornucopia, Rise now.
Yes, Rise.
I think that's the last one. Yeah, is it called Infinity Rising now? Is that what it's called? Yeah. Okay. So if this is the correct chart, which I think it is, although
maybe. I'm trying to find it too.
Yeah, I had a bit of. There's a few called Rise. You see, I had a look on CoinMarketCap, and
current price is at 0.5 cent.
If we put in Rise, there's like Infinity Rising, Ever Rise, Sunrise, and Rise. Price not tracks.
Infinity Rising is the one we're looking for. It's at 0.5 cent.
Yeah. Okay, that is the right one then. So, yeah, what can one say? It's still, despite the rebrand. Oh no, I want to stay on the page. What have I done? Yeah, there we are. Despite the rebrand, it is still in a downward trend. So I'm not sure why they've rebranded. You'd have to look at the fundamentals for that. It's got to be a good reason to change your name. Maybe they're taking over or something, but everyone knows the old name, so switching it to a new one is like you got to start your marketing again, because I didn't know it changed its name, and I wouldn't have known to look for it. If I'd look, obviously I'd find it if I'd look for it, but I think that's from a marketing strategy. There's got to be a good reason for that. So perhaps fresh blood will come in and reverse this trend, but there's no technical evidence. There's a big gap to the downside, which was probably, it was anticipated that something was going to happen, and it has happened. So effectively this becomes almost a new project, because now it's changed. You'd have to look at, what's behind it and what the changes have been. And I know that sounds fundamental, but when there is a name change like this, it does say that there's been a big event, of course. And with regard to the chart, I sort of want to give it a bit more leeway for it to develop its own trend from now to perhaps turn things around. But overall, we still do have to look at who's invested in it in the context of the trend and the price action that we're seeing. And with regard to that, if we plot it backwards, it's still downwards, and there's still a lot of work for it to do before it gets into an upward trend. This area here certainly is very key. It 1, 2, and then third it broke with a massive gap. So it's got to overcome that on the upside. If it does try to do that, it would have broken this downward trend line in the process. So that would be my tripwire for things looking interesting. Apart from another form of technical reversal pattern that could form here, it's possible, but at the moment, all we've got is a downward trend. So I have to go with that and say, for me, it's definitely a wait.
Right. Yes, most of the crypto charts right now are not signaling a turnaround yet. And it's a Paul wait. Now, I like Infinity Rising a lot. So Cornucopias is a game I've followed for a very long time, and they've been very tight with their funds along the way and keeping spending at a minimum for development. And I like that. That's given them a lot of runway. They also have built enough of a community that they've been able to raise additional funds along the way through selling items and by holding a staking pool and doing other things to raise funds, which has been smart to extend their runway so that the project can hopefully take off before crashing at the end of the runway into the jungle. I like that. I don't know exactly where the runway's at. Good idea for an interview. I will hit them up and see if we can do an interview with them. We've done multiple interviews with them along the way. I like the open world game that they're building, and they did a land sale a long time ago. They recently did the allocation where you could then pick your piece of land, and the way they did it ran really, really smoothly. I'm very impressed with what they're doing. I'm sure them, like all the other blockchain gaming projects, wish crypto would take off by now, but it hasn't, which has brought us to an extremely cheap price for their token, where it's essentially at half a cent. Because when the narrative ran before, it shows that it went to 11 cents here. It went actually to 13 to 15 cents. And so it's down considerably just from the bear market highs that it experienced when blockchain gaming ran tremendously. So it's a killer deal. We'll see, if they've got enough runway. Hopefully we can set up an interview. I like it a lot. And I'm okay that crypto isn't in the narrative now. It will shift, just like what I felt like in 2017 when I was newer. It felt like all the narratives but what I was in was running, and it felt like it would never shift over to what I was in. Oh, but it did. And it did really powerfully. I just, on some of them, I jumped out of what was not moving into what was, and it was just a big mistake. My gains would have been so much higher had I not done that. And I learned that lesson through pain. So now I don't chase the boats that I've missed, is what I call, and I don't chase massive green candles, because that's what leads to you jumping into a boat that's already done most of its gains and miss out on whatever highly researched thing you were in that just hasn't had its pump yet. So I learned just to be patient, let it play out, see if my thesis is right. And that went very well for me in 2021 because I learned that lesson so solidly in 2017. All right. Yeah, I think that's all the ones on our schedule to look at. So, oh no, Jimbo asked if we can look at midnight. I'd love to look at midnight. I wish there was more history on it. I'm fascinated with this project, so let's definitely talk about it.
Night. Okay, let's have a look. Is there much data? Is it new?
It's new. So if you go to like a daily, you'll get some, but like the weekly isn't going to show hardly anything.
Yeah, look, Christmas Day, it starts. Maybe that's when it was first kind of minted, as it were. Nothing I can really say about this. There's not a lot of data, unfortunately. Why is it so interesting? Is it in a really interesting area, or?
So the founder of Cardano created this as a privacy coin.
Ah, okay. Oh, that is interesting.
And
Yeah,
you know
anything with
what?
the privacy
They
narrative.
actually, do you know who they use as their bank?
No.
Bloomsbury Money.
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet they do. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. Yeah. So look, it would be, this would be one of those ones where you just got to put a little bit in it and then assume it's going to go to zero. But if it goes up, then great. That's how I would approach it anyway. Only because of the narrative, only because of what you've just said there. It's the person. You know, if you've got Shark Tank, or not you because you're in Canada, but people who are in America, they've got Shark Tank, and we've got the Dragon's Den, where people come and pitch ideas, and often or not, projects get pushed around by the markets. But overall, and it's what you've said as well, what you're dealing with is the people who are behind the project, and that's what they invest in. Now, as long as they've got good people, it doesn't guarantee it's going to work. It's just that you've got to have the best people, and then you've got the best chance of doing something. So given those two things, I would say that does increase the chance that this could be an interesting project. At the moment, it's very neutral and there's not a lot of data. So I can't say definitively that this is a buy or a sell, just because it's kind of caught in the middle of a range and there's not much price action. But it is interesting from a fundamental point of view, which I would defer to you for a view on that. And it certainly gets put on the watch list, because any signs that the dynamics are changing and like the market's starting to move up or potentially accelerate, I'm going to be tuned into much more, because I like the idea of it. And it's not just a meme coin or something else that has got nothing behind it. So I think that's very interesting. At this point in time, as I say, there's nothing technically that I can say to make it a buy other than, potentially the fundamentals. So I'd have to say it's a wait, but it's definitely one that, great that you've highlighted it, great that you brought it to our attention. I would hate to see it all the way up here and not have heard about it, and that's the whole point. Like, step one is actually being, shown that there's something like this that could be ready to run. And point two is finding it and watching it go and then jumping on board. So thanks for putting it on the watch list. I will be watching it very, very carefully.
So I like to go to CoinMarketCap over CoinMarketCap and CoinGecko. Sometimes smaller projects CoinMarketCap doesn't have, but it definitely has this one. The market cap on this is about $1 billion. It looks like the circulating supply is essentially 2/3 of the token is in circulation, according to what it's saying here. Okay, so even though it's so relatively new, it seems like a bunch of their tokens are in circulation. I want to read this, so it's a little bit long. I'll try to make it as interesting as possible, but in researching fundamentals, we want to know what a token is about. And sometimes there's a lot of fluff in these descriptions, and this one doesn't have all that fluff. I don't like to see all that dumb fluff using buzzwords. Midnight is a new generation of blockchain developed by Charles Hoskinson, the co-founder of Ethereum and founder of Cardano, that uses zero-knowledge proof technology to offer utility without compromising data protection or ownership, enabling applications that safeguard user, commercial, and transaction data and metadata. So essentially, privacy coin, founded by one of the founders of one of the most successful blockchains out there. Midnight introduced a novel blockchain architecture designed to address key privacy limiting designs of existing public blockchains, supporting applications that require a balance between privacy and disclosure. I like it a lot. And so Charles Hoskinson, I followed him so closely back in 2019, 2020, 2021. That's why I held so much Cardano at a time when everybody was hating on Charles Hoskinson and Cardano and calling it a failure. And it made me a ton of my gains in the 2020 bull run. And it was based on fundamental research. He's very smart. He's very thoughtful about how he approaches things as far as the technology behind it, so that he can limit the problems with it as it does go to scale. He's done a good job with that with Cardano. And so I'm a big fan of Midnight. Good suggestion. Now, not much price data to look at. I don't know based on these charts, like where it's going to go. But yeah, $1 billion market cap, not bad. I would like to see it even cheaper. Before I was going to load up on a bunch of it, I would like to see it even cheaper just to make sure I'm getting it at a really, really good deal. Because as we've seen in other places, there are amazing other deals out there. So for me, it'd be a wait, not because I'm not bullish on this. I really, really like what he's doing here. And we have seen privacy coins take off, and this one didn't run with them yet. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Paul, for joining us.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the picks. Thanks, guys. Next week I'm at a conference, but I'm going to try and come. So we're going to work out the timings on that. You know, hope everything goes well this week. Thanks again for the picks. I'll be keeping an eye on them wherever I am. And yeah, we'll see what happens to the markets after the rate decision.
All right. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
All right. For those of you here, I know you probably want to listen to that song. Remember, not chasing the boats that you've missed. And that's such a key principle. I learned the hard way, and I hope you're ready to already learn that lesson from me paying the price for it. But sometimes, even though someone says don't touch the hot stove, sometimes you have to touch the hot stove and see how it goes. Every once in a while, it does work out okay for people. I just try to take decisions where the odds are better for me than against me. Because sometimes if you have a 1 in 10 chance of winning, sometimes you will win and you don't realize how bad the odds really were for you. So I just try to take positions and odds where things are stacked away for me than against me. And when I'm chasing boats that I missed, the odds are right from the get-go stacked against you, especially when you're selling something that has been price punished to get in there. Old skill song, Jay, put the old one on. You know, I don't have loaded up. It's on one of my old computers, the old one that gal did for me. I'll see if I can get it. I won't be able to have it for today's show. You know, we do have this, and I can show a second of it, but part of it is has a song in it that has monetization on it, so it demonetizes my whole show. Let's see. Do you guys remember this thing? So I had to stop that so it doesn't use too much of the song. It just gives you a second of it so that there's not like the monetization problem. But this is our Rainmaker wrap. Enjoy. Don't chase the boats that you've missed.
Came into the space chasing all of the games, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, right before you could, was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. Buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling a parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort, cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be crafting. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I'll follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.